Partners and friends of Expected Ministries, hi, it's Katie Souza. You guys are so amazing and awesome. Thank you so much for all your prayers because they worked. I just want to give you a report. Most of you heard that myself and my videographer, Amy Dawson, were in a very serious accident in Knoxville, Tennessee. We were traveling on a highway at highway speed when a man cut directly in front of us, and we T-boned his car and got into a very serious collision that totaled our driver's car. Our driver, Gary, received 3 broken ribs and a nicked lung. My videographer was deeply tissue damaged with deep bruising and knotting, and I mean, she was literally black and green and blue and purple with severe injuries also. And I myself had 2 broken ribs. I had what's called a hemothorax. It's when you start internally bleeding inside of yourself, and my chest wall filled up with blood, which causes a crushing of the lungs. And so it made it where I could hardly breathe, and then my lungs began to fill up with fluid. So at the scene of the accident, I was struggling for breath. I could barely breathe. But within 20 minutes, you guys are praying. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of you from across the country were praying in their homes, at different meetings. Joanne McFadder, Ian Clayton, and their conference were praying for us. Joan Hunter was praying for us. It was amazing. And her group of people, all you guys are praying for us. And they were rushing us back to the hospital, and they were taking me into OR. I'm told the procedure to drain the blood out of the chest cavity is that they stick a tube in your chest, pull the blood out so that it releases the lungs to begin to breathe. And so I'm struggling for breath. But at the same time, I felt the power of God, the presence of God protecting me, even though I was so, the enemy was trying to fill me with fear. And when you can't breathe, you tend to panic. But then they rolled me into the OR, and in one instant, I could breathe and I could talk. I even had to ask my ambulance driver, what happened? Did you give me some sort of medication or something? I can breathe, I can talk. It happened in an instant. Did you do something? And he looked at me so surprised. He'd been trying to get me to talk to him for 40 minutes, and I couldn't speak. And then he said, well, what's happened? You can talk. I said, I know. I think God has done something for me. He goes, yeah, well, I didn't give you anything. I'm not allowed to give you anything until we diagnose you. And I said, then I've had a miracle from God. So I had a miracle right there in the hospital. But I took a CT scan. I still had the blood. It had stopped bleeding. I had stopped my internal bleeding. I still had the fluid, and I had the 2 broken ribs. But within 2 weeks, I was refusing to take my pain pills because they were just making me worse, and I was believing God for a miracle. I knew you were all praying. I knew God can do a miracle because we see hundreds of miracles all the time. And I sat down in my house with my intercessors one day, and I said, Lord, I know you want to heal me. I believe it. And we began to soak our souls, began to spend time with the Lord. And one of my intercessors saw a vision. She saw a vision of a waterfall flowing over my ribs. At that time, I was in agony. I could barely walk. I could barely breathe. I was in such pain from the broken ribs. And I'm like, well, I receive that even though I do not feel it in the name of Jesus. And I remember going to bed that night. I was in such agony from my ribs. My husband had to rub my feet. He had to help me. It was so hard for me to even just take a breath to get comfortable. I was in such pain. And I finally went to sleep that night. And all night long, I had this dream about someone painting a wall. I had no idea what they were painting until the morning came. And then I focused in on the painting, and I saw it was a picture of a huge waterfall. What my intercessor had seen. I opened my eyes, and the pain was completely gone. I knew I'd been healed. So I went back to my doctor, and I requested very strongly that they give me a new x-ray because I knew that I was going to have proof that I got a miracle. And they said, well, you just had 2 CT scans 2 weeks ago. This was on the 14th day after the accident. He said, your ribs are not healed by now. I said, I've had a miracle. You need to give me permission to go to the radiologist. So they gave me the paper. I went and got the x-ray, went into a new doctor because they moved me to a doctor closer to my house. He took out the x-ray and he looked at it. He took out the second one, he looked at that. He took out the third one, he finally looked at me and said, who told you you have broken ribs? Your ribs aren't broken. I had indeed received a miracle from the Lord. I'm so grateful, and I know that many of you prayed for me, and that is a big part of one of the reasons that I was supernaturally healed by God. Thank you so much. I've received cards, I've received gifts, we've received phone calls, we've received Facebook messages, and I love you guys so much. Thank you so much. I feel like I've never even been in an accident. It's only been 5 weeks since the accident, and I feel the power of your prayers have brought me complete healing. I'm so grateful to you all.